Welcome to the Build Up California policy briefing about the 2022-2023 California state budget may revise and investments in child care and development infrastructure. This event is being held as part of our campaign for state investments in early childhood care and education facilities infrastructure, the built environment of the child care services. By increasing the quality of our child care facilities, we provide optimal environments for children, staff, and families, ones that foster relationships, nurture development, promote health and wellness, and facilitate learning. My name is Erica Erickson, and I'm the Policy and Program Officer for Early Care and Education, or ECE, at the Low Income Investment Fund. In this role, I have the honor to coordinate the development of Build Up California, a statewide network of early learning facilities champions launched in 2020. Before we introduce our team of experts here today, I want to share information about logistics. This event is being hosted in English with simultaneous translation to Spanish. So if you need interpretation, si necesita interpretación a español, por favor presione the button de interpretation at the bottom of your screen, en la parte de abajo de tu pantalla. This event is also being hosted in a webinar mode, so please use the chat to share your comments and Q&A functions to ask your questions. Following the speaker's remarks, we will have a Q&A session. So please use the chat or the Q&A function to share your insights and comments, because we are going to select some of the questions for the speakers to answer. We will start our event with a land acknowledgement led by Jenny from the Tribal Child Care Association. So Jenny, let's have you lead us in that piece.
Thank you so much, Erica, and thanks for the invitation to join you all. As the Operations Director of the Tribal Child Care Association of California, I'm honored to open with this land acknowledgement. We understand and acknowledge our place on Native lands and are mindful of the past and present participation in colonial legacies. As partners with more than 80 Native American tribes in California, we stand in solidarity with all Indigenous communities and strive for cultural consciousness, respect Indigenous practices, and take responsibility to amplify Indigenous voices. We acknowledge the pre-contact Indigenous population in California, represented on the map you're viewing now. It was one of the largest and most diverse in the Western Hemisphere and spoke over 300 Native American dialects and as many as 90 languages. We acknowledge that the culture and heritage of the entire state rest with the Indigenous people who have continuously lived upon this land since time immemorial. We recognize the historic discrimination and violence inflicted upon Indigenous peoples in California and the Americas, including their forced removal from ancestral lands and the deliberate and systematic destruction of their communities and culture. We recognize how policies, systems, and structures continue to oppress and erase Indigenous people and their ability to remain in tribal communities on tribal lands and continue traditional practices with their tribes even today. There are currently over 100 federally recognized Native American tribes in California, and even more communities and tribal groups who are not currently federally recognized. California has the highest Native American population in the country. Los Angeles and San Francisco have two of the largest urban Native American populations in the United States. We make it our mission to support these resilient and resourceful communities by raising the voice of tribal nations to support equitable approaches for social services, policies, and practices through building relationships founded on greater consciousness of Native sovereignty and cultural rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. So our agenda for today, we have, as you just experienced, a welcome and our land acknowledgement. We will go over the state budget May revision, the elements of early care and education in that version of the proposed budget. And Kristin Schumacher will be leading us with on that piece. She recorded a special video for us as she's out of town. But we are going to also have some remarks by Just Blakely from Crystal Stairs, where he's going to share our policy priorities and May revision response as EC Coalition. Also, we are going to have a brief overview, but about our Build Up California May revised response to regarding the EC infrastructure investments in that. And then we will have an overview of our requests regarding the infrastructure grant program. And then we are going to hear from family childcare providers like Yessika Magdaleno, Elida, and Benu about their perspective of the May revise and the need for investments in infrastructure. We are also going to hear again from Jenny, where she's going to share the tribal community's perspective. And we are going to also hear from Keisha Nzewi, she's going to share with us the Resource and Referral Agency's perspective. She's with the California Child Care Resources and Referral Network. Also, we are going to have an overview of our request for $10 million for the co-location of affordable housing and child care. It's a new fund we are proposing, and we are going to have an Assembly Member Ward Representative Bethany Westfall with us, sharing an update about this request, and also an overview and the perspective from San Diego for Every Child with Erin. So, as you can see, we have a pretty robust agenda, and we are going to start with a brief overview of our of the May revise, and we will share a video from Kristin, and we will share the video that she recorded for us.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kristin Schumacher. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm with the California Budget and Policy Center. For those of you that aren't familiar, the Budget Center is a nonprofit here in Sacramento that engages in fiscal and policy research with the goal of improving the lives of low and middle income Californians. I've been asked today to provide a brief overview of the early care and education proposals included in the May revision. So to begin, as a refresher, the May revision is the updated budget proposal released by the governor. Per our state constitution, it must be released on or before May 14th. This year, it came out on Friday the 13th. Every year, the revised budget will have an updated economic and revenue outlook, along with proposed expenditures to reflect those revised estimates and assumptions. The May revision is also going to amend, supplement, or withdraw policy initiatives that were included in the governor's proposed budget that was released in January. And that's what I'm going to cover here today. So in the next few slides, I provided a brief overview of what was included in the January proposal and how the May revision adjusts these proposals. So in January, the governor's subsidized childcare proposal included adding an additional 36,000 childcare spaces for children from families with low and moderate incomes in California. This was part of a plan that was initiated in last year's budget agreement to add 200,000 subsidized childcare spaces to the system in the next few years. So the May revision maintains this proposal, and if it's included in the final budget, it would bring the total in new spaces across the 21-22 and 22-23 state fiscal years to roughly 147,000 spaces. The May revision also included additional funding in the 22-23 fiscal year for childcare infrastructure, specifically for minor repairs and renovations. I'm sure that you'll hear more about that in just a few minutes. As some of you may recall, the January proposal did not include any provisions to continue supporting families and providers during the pandemic. However, the good news is that the May revision does include funding specifically to continue the family fee waiver through June 2023, and also to continue reimbursing providers based on enrollment, not attendance. Finally, the May revision adds $20 million in funding for the alternative payment program to build capacity to enroll new children and families in all of those new spaces that we're adding over this next few years. As some of you may recall, the governor's January budget proposal included some really significant changes to the California State Preschool Program. So the first bullet on the left-hand side is the requirement that 10% of children enrolled in the state preschool program have a disability, and that providers offer additional supportive services for children who are dual language learners. This proposal is maintained in the May revision, and there is an updated estimated cost of $351 million. That cost just reflects the additional funding that will be paid to providers for this care and services. The May revision also includes the proposed change in eligibility rules in the January budget, which would allow preschool program providers to enroll 2-year-olds if all other older children are served. May revision also includes a new adjustment factor for 2-year-olds enrolled in the state preschool program, so that providers who do enroll younger children get paid a bit more to care for that younger age group. And then once a family is determined to be eligible, the 12-month eligibility period would be extended to 24 months. That's another January proposal that's maintained in May. The May revision also maintains the $500 million in one-time Prop 98 dollars for the Inclusive Early Education Expansion Program to build or modify facilities. And then finally, similar to the child care programs, certain pandemic-related protections are included in the May revision, including the family fee waiver and that hold harmless provision, which would pay providers based on their contract with the state, regardless of student attendance. So, as some of you may know, the 22-23 state fiscal year and academic year will be year 2 of the universal transitional kindergarten implementation. The May revision maintains that $1 billion investment to continue this effort that we saw in the January proposal. Approximately 60% of that $1 billion is to serve more children, so those turning 5 between September 2nd and February 2nd, instead of limiting it to those turning 5 between September 2nd and December 2nd. About 40% of that $1 billion is to add more staff to those TK classrooms to keep those adult to student ratios lower than what they currently are at right now. And then finally, the May revision has a new proposal for that year 2 of the UTK rollout. Some of you may know that California is currently experiencing a teacher shortage, and to make sure that there are going to be staff available to teach more children in additional TK classrooms, the May revision proposes to temporarily suspend credentialed requirements for TK teachers as long as they're working on obtaining a credential. So the suspension of the credential requirement would sunset in 2026. This concludes my overview of early care and education proposals in the May revision. My contact information is on this slide. Please feel free to be in touch. Thanks so much for your time. Have a good one.
So thank you, Kristin, for joining us today by video. Again, it's like, let me see. She always gives a great overviews and always have great data, thanks to the California Budget and Policy Center for their great work. So now we are going to hear from Justin Blakely from Crystal Stairs about the reaction, the policy priorities of the AC Coalition, where we are fellow members, and also the reaction to the May revise. So Justin.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Build Up California. Thank you to all my colleagues, fellow colleague panelists here, and thank you all who are participating this afternoon for this very important convening. And so I'm the Public Policy Associate for Crystal Stairs, and I'm also representing the ECE Coalition today to really talk about what are, as Erica even stated, what's our reaction and what is really the pulse of what we are all saying in response to the May revision that Kristin just provided in that video before. Just to give a brief overview of what the EC Coalition is, the EC Coalition advocates for state budget investments and policies that support coalition's vision of childcare and early childhood education systems that serve and meet the diverse needs of all children, families, ECE professionals, especially Black, Latinx, Indigenous people, and others harmed by systemic racism and additional injustices, integrate culturally, developmentally, and linguistically relevant and responsive high-quality care and education for children, inclusive of children with disabilities, and value and justly compensate all who serve children and families. So just to give a brief overview of before even the May Revise, the EC Coalition, which is comprised of a lot of organizations that are really looking to advance early education in California. We really had the high level of policy priorities, which included increasing our child care provider wages. We knew that obviously with the 2018 RMR increase, that was just not enough. You know, we know that inflation has increased since even 2018, 11%. And I'm sure we all have been to the gas station recently. We've been to our grocery stores. I can name a bunch of things, right? It has not gotten any better. You know, and so we're really advocating for that. Waiving family fees and increasing access for our families. That's a huge issue, right? And we see that, you know, as I'll go on and talk about what that looks like now in the May Revise, how we got to win with that, but it needs to be more, right? And then infrastructure grants and also workforce development grants is what we really were pushing for in terms of the high level policy priorities before the May Revise. The problem still persists though, right? Amid COVID-19, the pandemic is not over. You know, we know that, you know, we're moving toward this, I heard a phrase, you know, kind of like the endemic, right? Or we're kind of transitioning back into being in person, you know, we're in conference providers. Our child care providers and also our families are still suffering disproportionately in our Black and Latinx communities and other marginalized communities of color. You know, there's an inaccessibility of high quality childcare. There's a disproportionate inaccessibility or opportunity for our Black and Latinx women to return to the workforce, right? We read a labor statistic recently, and we will continue to bring this in that 1.8 million Black and Latinx, specifically women, still have not returned to the workforce in our nation, right? And it's because our childcare providers, the ECE workforce, is experiencing a mass exodus, and it's disproportionately affecting our Black and Latinx women, right? And so there's a real need for us to really uplift, elevate, and advance our most in need families, our working families, and of course, ensuring that our providers who take care of our children are supported and given all they need to be able to be, you know, in a greater position than they are now and have been historically, right? And so I'll kind of talk about our reaction to the May Revise really briefly, and then I'll close. You know, despite the rate increase in 2021, the current child care reimbursement rate does not cover the minimum wage increase from $11 to $15 per hour that occurred from 2018 to 2022. I'm talking about statewide, right? In fact, the May Revise compounds the problem by increasing the minimum wage to $15.50, as we saw that came out in the May Revise, without a rate increase for our child care providers, who we know were the backbone of continuing to keep our economy afloat during the, you know, the I guess, really large tumultuous times of the COVID-19 pandemic over the past 2 years, right? And California being the 5th largest economy in the world, yet providers have not seen a rate increase in a January or a May budget in well over 4 years. California, you know, mandates that there's a $15 minimum wage increase for all employers, but somehow the state has chosen to exempt themselves from providing that minimum wage increase to childcare providers. So it's a problem, and we're still looking to really address that. You know, so this means that, again, we need to look at how we consider where our value is as a state, right? You know, the economy, our workforce, and everything cannot return back fully to its real, what it was pre-pandemic. Although I argue that, again, our childcare providers, our ECE system was not at a whole state even then, but we cannot recover until we fully fund and fully invest in our early care and education system in California. And that's just period, right? And so here's what the EC Coalition is saying in response to the May revise and what additional investments need to be made, right? $1 billion in rate increases to childcare providers, including Head Start providers, as outlined in this Senate budget, the state Senate budget. Fully waive family fees through September 2024, as outlined also in the California State Senate's budget. Invest in childcare infrastructure at the tune of $300 million. Restore workforce development grants, as outlined in the budget, in the Senate budget's proposal, and adopt the May revised version of the hold harmless, essentially allowing providers to be compensated and reimbursed based on the maximum enrollment hours versus the attendance. And this is just this is not just, there's much more that needs to be made, right? But this is where we see that the most impact will serve our communities, specifically our disproportionately, those who are disproportionately impacted by systemic racism. And we know that this is an ecosystem, right? We can't just talk about funding one side without making sure we're funding the entire ecosystem. And so we're continuing to fight hard. I thank you all as participants, as early childhood and education advocates. I know we have EC practitioners, our providers. I salute you, I honor you. I recognize you as our heroes of the not only the pandemic, but a hero of our children's lives every day and day out. And you are the reason that our California economy will be able to thrive and will never, be able to be in a space where it continues to falter. So continue to do your great work. We appreciate you all. And that's our conclusion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Justin, for the overview from about the May revise and the reactions of the DC Coalition to the May revise and our policy priorities. I just want to add that in terms of the infrastructure, we also have another request, and we believe that's super important. That's the $10 million for co-location of housing and childcare, and we will hear about it in a minute. But we now are going to share a little bit, an overview and different perspectives about the need for investment in childcare infrastructure through the infrastructure grant program. So basically, just a brief background about the infrastructure grant program. We had, this program was created in 2019 by state legislature. And we had an investment of $263 million in that fund. That was $245 million from the general fund and $16 million from a loan program. That was the funds in that loan program was transferred to the grant program as requested by the field. So this investment was in conjunction with workforce development program. So as Justin said, all the pieces together, right? We cannot invest in infrastructure if we don't invest in the workforce. So for that funds, we had approximately like $250 million, and both together was $500 million that was invested in our field. COVID hit, and because of the crisis that was predicted, economic crisis, and the fiscal impact in our budget, these funds were cut and basically completely cut, including the loan program funds that we had. So our field lost in the budget this $263 million, right, for the infrastructure facilities, and also for the facility infrastructure, but also the workforce and development. And then we had last year an investment by the state of $250 million and in the infrastructure grant program, and that included $150 million from the general fund for major construction and renovation, and $100 million for repairs and renovation from ARPA funds. That's an allowable use of the ARPA funds. So now DSS is doing the distribution of these funds. They open the application process for these funds, and the $100 million, we as a state got over 5,000 applications for these funds. A lot of them from childcare providers, and also we got a request of over $400 million for these projects, right? So the demand is there, or it's here in our state, and we need to address it. So that's why this year we are making a request of $300 million for the Child Care and Development Infrastructure Grant Program to address especially the equity gaps that we identify in the implementation of this first part of fund that was approved last year. So you see here on the slide on the right side, you have the outline of the requests we have, and these are to address, again, the equity gaps we see. So we have tribal communities, we have rural communities, we have climate resilience. As you know, our weather is getting hotter earlier in the year. We experienced very hot days this week already, especially in Sacramento. And then we all feel that, and the providers also feel. And a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the facilities we are not ready for this, and we need to be ready. So that's also why we included here climate resilience, technical assistance, especially before the grant application. As we are going to hear from our speakers, many of providers had challenges in applying for the grants, and we need to support them so we have an equitable distribution of these funds. And we also are requesting planning, pre-development, and startup cost grants for capacity building childcare deserts. So we are going to now hear, let me share the screen, and we are going to hear from different providers, and I'm going to invite them to come. Let me spotlight them on the screen to talk about the perspective of family childcare providers. So we have here with us Elida, we have Benu. Let's bring that on, and then we have Yessika. Yessika, can you, okay, here we go. So we have Yessika. So Elida, Benu, and Yessika, could you please introduce yourself, like we're starting with Benu, and talk a little bit about the process of that you passed through during the application process for the first round of the grants, and your experience with that, and then also the needs that you'd like to highlight in terms of family childcare providers. So thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Benu Chhabra, and I'm a large licensed family childcare provider in Contra Costa County for over 22 years. I'm also a president for our local association, Bay Area Family Childcare Network. I'm also a CAFE co-chairperson for California Family Childcare Network. So the technical assistance and training for providers to apply for grant opportunities and carry on renovation projects are critical, especially for family childcare providers like us. We are small business owners specialized in early childhood education, not how to upgrade our facilities or apply for grants. In February, when the Department of Social Services released the request for applications as one of the mentors and president of our Bay Area Professional Family Childcare Association, I received a lot of messages from fellow providers requesting the support with understanding and filling out the application. So together with Elida and Yessika, and with the support from childcare change makers, especially Michelle, we were able to host our 4 webinars for 1,000 providers. These took many hours together to plan and review the application. It was effective to over 70% of providers who attended the webinars became more confident filling out the applications. Training like this is crucial for successful applications. So here, I want to say thank you today for giving me this opportunity to speak, and I will pass now to Yessika. Thank you.
Can you guys hear me? Yes? Okay, sorry. I'm having some technical issues. I don't know why. Thank you, Benu. Thank you, Benu. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. And my name is Yessika Magdaleno. I'm a family child care provider in the Orange County. I've been doing this for 20 years. Well, actually, this month on the 31st, I will be 21. So many years, huh? Yeah. I am the president of Orange County Child Care Association, and I'm also with the California Family Child Care Network. I'm the chair for the Hispanic with that association. I am so glad that we held these workshops, as Benu mentioned, but it was not only the workshops. We each took over 200 other hours to answer questions we received through text messages and emails. Simple requests like, for example, how to find the submit button on the application, but the answer with patience and solidarity. Because we know how hard it is to have a family childcare business, we know how harder it is when a provider doesn't speak English well. Part of the technical assistance is providing support in different languages, especially Spanish, Chinese, and others. We are the backbone of our economy, and we nurture the minds, hearts, and bodies of the next generation of professionals and leaders. We need more support to do this work well in an environmental that is good for learning, where the children feel safe and loved. I will now pass it to Elida to discuss a change we face with our environment and climate change. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elida Cruz, and I am also a large licensed daycare provider here in Kern County. I'm in the Central Valley. So one of the challenges and needs that I'm faced with is like Erica just said, it's the temperature, high temperatures that we have to go through. This week along, I believe we hit, I believe it was over 95 degrees. And we're barely starting the summer. Here where I live, sometimes we have hit 113 degrees. And along with that, I have to mention all the fires that start up. And with that, I myself and other providers here in my community are faced with a tremendous high electricity bill. What do I mean by high? Because I get the report from the electricity department saying, Mrs. Cruz, you're using a lot more energy than your community. And they gave me graphics where they show how much my neighbors use of electricity and the high point that I'm using. But why is that? Because I have all the 14 children under my protection, and I want to give them an environment where they are comfortable and they have the quality care that I want to provide them. And so I have to use my electricity. And for that, I have no other refund or that I can count on to pay my electricity bill. And my neighbors, they usually pay an average of $400, and my bill is sometimes more than $850. And so that it is a big difference. And also I want to mention to you that my main AC unit cannot handle all the little teeny little buddies that I have here. So what did I have to do? I had to go to Lowe's and get an extra AC unit and install it in my classroom so that I can provide a comfortable temperature for my children. And so that is one of the main and the hardest, I would say, challenges that I've been faced along with. And also I want to go back to the fires. when every time we have a fire here in the Central Valley, we have all this ashes outside. And so not even by 9 o'clock in the morning, sometimes we try to go outside and the kids, I see them, they can't breathe, or they're kind of like coughing. And so what do I have to do? Bring them back inside, because I don't want to put them in danger. And so that's why we want to make sure, we want to reinforce that the funds are being needed. So please consider them. And I'm just sharing something that I'm sure, along with my colleagues, we are being faced with the same thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elida, Yessika, and Benu. Your work so crucial. Like Justin said, we honor you. We are so grateful for all the work you do. And I hope that our budget reflects, our state budget reflects that, right? So thanks again. And then now we are going to have the perspective of the tribal communities, and we will have Jenny sharing with us the importance of investment in infrastructure in tribal communities. Jennifer?
Hi, thank you. I'm Jenny McGowan, and I am the Operations Director for the Tribal Child Care Association of California. As I said before in the opening, I've been in tribal early learning and care for over 15 years. I've been a direct service provider, a director, I've sat on boards and volunteered, and now I've been with the association for 3 years now. And our mission is to raise the voices of tribal communities and their needs. There's not a lot of data on tribal communities and their childcare. We're often left out of those numbers. And so there's not a lot of information. So our mission has been really to go to the communities to raise the voices, to see what those barriers are. And there is a definite need for tribal facilities. There's a definite need for a tribal set aside and training and technical assistance for tribal child care facilities to ensure that there's an equitable approach for tribal programs and quality programs for children and families in those tribal communities. We represent, there are 34 tribal child care development fund grantees in California that represent over 80 of the 110 tribes. And we're located all across the state of California in every county. Yet there are literally only 13 tribally operated child care facilities. Many of the programs are located in what are considered the child care deserts, and yes, often in low income areas. However, funding and location aren't the only barriers to tribes being able to develop properties and build facilities. Many tribal communities are reluctant to even apply for funding due to the lack of resources in their communities that are available. And in many communities where resources are available, the administrative workforce isn't there to even apply for the funding. And when there is, they don't have the technical knowledge to be able to apply for a facilities fund. Oftentimes, we just don't have the resources and the knowledge of building and planning. We don't have those think partners to support the dreaming and planning phase. The initial process for the land development, the environmental impact report, procurement packages, et cetera, that goes along with acquiring this funding deters many tribes from even inquiring into their ability to try to see the project through. I've experienced some instances where tribes had the opportunities to apply and they decided to go for it, only to have navigating the process of development without technical support leaves them unprepared and unable to apply, or if they have applied, to receive the funds and see the project through. We all know children and families thrive in quality early learning and care settings. We know this to be true. Tribal families are also reluctant to send their children to non-native programs due to historical traumas or the thought that their child will not be immersed in their culture and lose their cultural identity. Children and families who are lucky enough to have a tribal child care program near them thrive in an environment grounded in cultural competencies. They develop a strong sense of identity, and the families join together in their community and take action and an active role in their child's education at an early age that follows them throughout and ensures their success later in life. We need more tribal child care facilities. We must have a tribal set aside for facilities funding and training and technical assistance that supports the project from the initial dreaming and planning phase through the brick and mortar and to the doors opening to ensure that these programs are successful and that tribal families and children thrive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and really important perspective, and pretty alarming, the numbers, right? So I want to, before I invite Keisha to join us here, I want to share with you what is on the May revise, in the May revise. Here, regarding childcare infrastructure grant program, as I mentioned, we had the investment in 2001, that was 250 million. These funds are being distributed now. These funds don't include technical assistance. And we just heard about this importance, and we will hear a little bit more. And now this year, for the 22-23 state budget, we have a proposal in the May revise of $200.5 million, but it's specifically at this point, the proposal has that's only for minor renovation and repairs, focused on childcare deserts and low-income communities. So we just heard how important it is, the technical assistance piece, and then also how communities like tribal communities should be considered, especially considered to have an equitable approach. So this is our request. Our request continue to be 300 million. And I would like to invite Keisha to join me here on camera to talk about the results of this survey that they did about the first round of grants, and also shared recommendations for this next round. So Keisha? Here you are. Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Keisha Nzewi. I'm with the California Child Care Resource and Referral Network. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to especially follow the child care providers who spoke so eloquently about their experience in trying to apply for these grants this year. So 3 weeks ago, the R&R Network put out a survey to childcare providers throughout the state about their experience with applying or not applying for the minor renovation and repair grant. And we closed it a week ago, so it was open for 14 days, and we got nearly 3,000 responses. And there were responses from, I think, all but one county in the state. So it's really widespread, though the concentration of responses come from places you would expect. What we found was that, one, this was a very, of those who responded to our survey, they were very educated. They had at least some college. Nearly 90% had at least some college, all the way up to PhD. So these are folks who, whether or not they spoke English, because many obviously spoke other languages, we offered the survey in Spanish, English, traditional Chinese, Farsi, and Russian, and we had responses in every language, that everyone has education, but everyone found this application to be extremely difficult to navigate and understand. It was very long and confusing, that's a quote. And so I just wanted to put that out there to show that this was clearly, again, very long and confusing process for people. But what jumped out at us as to what was the most difficulty was a theme of time. People who, whether they completed it or not, the challenges around it was time enough to complete it, time enough to find a contractor, time enough to find bids from that contractor, time enough, I feel like there was one other time, but whether or not they completed it, those were the complaints. Additionally, having access to the application in their language and having access to the application without having to go online. So having a paper application would have been helpful for many providers. So I wanted to share also, much to what Benu and Yessika shared, is that those who did find help, they found help at their local R&R, their local Child Care Association, or the Child Care Providers United, the union. So those were the almost equally, a third of people who responded founded their help in one of those three places, in addition to others, but those were the most often places people went for help. So with that, one more point of data point is that those who actually completed an application were more likely to have higher household incomes. They were more likely to speak English. They were less likely to be Black or Native American. So those are just some demographics of those who did complete it. And so based on that, we have some recommendations. Because as Erica just mentioned, this fund has existed before. It has funding now. It's going to continue to have funding, and hopefully it will continue to have funding forever. However, it may come and go. So no matter what process they use in the new year for selecting awardees, the fund will always exist. And so these recommendations will always be relevant. Language was a big deal. So applications need to be available in at least 5 languages statewide, but more appropriately, it should be available in the top 5 languages that are spoken in each county in California. Before the RFA is even developed, all of these organizations that I mentioned, plus many others who are experts in childcare, should be collaborated with to develop the RFA, so that the RFA is clear, concise, and in plain language without the use of legalese and jargon. And then those organizations that providers clearly turn to because they trusted them for help should be trained in advance to provide technical assistance and paid for providing that technical assistance. Timelines for the completion need to be realistic and take into account the time needed for a small business owner to compile and complete the required components. Available technical assistance should be communicated to potential applicants regularly, including by language accessibility. It should be made clear that technical assistance is available to everyone who needs it, with clear instructions on how to access it. And those organizations that provide technical assistance should be able to do it, should make it available during non-business hours, should do it by webinar, in person, individual technical assistance by phone, or utilizing technology that allows for a shared screen and in all of the necessary languages. And then there should also be the option for a paper application, for someone to request a paper application, and when they receive that application, that it includes a already postage paid return envelope. So those are the quick, this data is all very new. Like I said, we closed it a week ago. And so those are the quick recommendations and conclusions that we've made and will continue to advocate for through this budget season. And also, many of these things do not require legislation to occur. So we'll be advocating with DSS to just change the way of doing business.
Thank you so much, Keisha. I see many messages in the chat agreeing with everything you said.
Good.
So yes to all that you said and more, right? I hope that we can improve as we create this culture of investing facilities in our state as an important piece of the puzzle that's childcare services, that we can improve the process. So thank you so much for everything you do. I thank you for all the R&Rs around the state, and hopefully we can all work together to improve this process. So thank you so much. And I will now move us to the next piece of our proposal. But before, these are the organizations supporting our 300 million request. These are some of their logos, and there are many more. So please visit our website for more information. Now I want to move us as we come to the end of our event, but we want to talk about another request that is as important, that is about co-location of childcare and early learning facilities with affordable housing projects. As we know, and our speakers will touch on that. Affordable housing is a critical service to elevate families out of poverty, and other services need to be provided together with that. And childcare is one of the most crucial of these services. And we need what we are proposing is something that happened in Oregon last year, is the creation of a fund to promote this development of childcare together with affordable housing. This will be a low interest loan and grant program that support the financing of childcare centers and family childcare housing units that are co-located with affordable housing. So here we have Erin from San Diego for Every Child, and I am going to invite her to speak about this proposal on the perspective of San Diego for Every Child. Erin?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Erica. And I want to start by thanking also Elida, Yessika, and Benu, the childcare providers who spoke earlier, as well as those tuning in. I echo Justin that you are all the foundation of our community. So thank you so much for being here. My name is Erin Hogeboom, and I am Director of Policy and Strategy for San Diego for Every Child. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here briefly. Okay. And at San Diego for Every Child, we sincerely believe and are dedicated to the belief that together we can end the experience of child poverty. San Diego for Every Child is a countywide coalition of individuals and organizations committed to cutting the experience of child poverty across our region. Today, I'll be talking you through a bit about us, as well as introducing you to the Children First Collective of San Diego, and finally providing a snapshot of our region's efforts to focus on childcare facilities, and more specifically, co-locating childcare facilities in affordable housing for both family homes and centers. I'd like to begin with this stark statistic for you. In San Diego County, pre-pandemic, the American Community Survey showed that 40%, nearly half of all of our children under 12, are living in households making less than double percent of the federal poverty level. We doubled that level because has not been changed really since 1963 besides inflation. And we know that for a family of four making $53,000 a year in San Diego County, you are still struggling to make ends meet. Our approach at San Diego for Every Child is threefold to tackle this big entrenched societal problem. First, we know it's going to take all of us pulling in the right direction to get there. This means having everyone having an awareness and the data at their fingertips to empower their advocacy. This awareness building and advocacy comes from a culture shift across our county, one in which we see all San Diego children as our children and support policies and system changes that really work for families. Second, all that we do is in collaboration and focuses on coalition building across the four service sectors of childcare, housing, hunger relief, and healthcare. We know that it is so important to ensure that basic service sectors are working together at a systems level to take the onus off of families. It's why we help bring this framework to every conversation and make connections necessary for action. Our co-location work is squarely couched in this pillar of our work in the Children First Collective, which I'll talk about in a second. And finally, we operate with the deep belief that families are the experts of their own experience, and that as those that they are closest to both the problem and any potential solutions, those solutions are best driven and guided from that perspective. In this third pillar of our work, it currently takes the form of an incubation of San Diego's first guaranteed income pilot project, which I'm always happy to talk about or refer folks to my colleagues. So our work has one through line, and that is to be responsive to community need and what we're hearing from families. It's no surprise that families want to live nearby access to healthy food, reliable healthcare, and quality, affordable childcare. And for affordable quality childcare, we know the basic equation is two things: workforce and facilities. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Children First Collective and how we got started looking at facilities. San Diego for Every Child helped co-lead the Children First Collective, which is an initiative bringing together passionate voices across the San Diego childcare ecosystem, including system leaders, providers, employers, and parents. Together, we are creating a local movement across San Diego County with an urgent mission to make quality, affordable childcare available to every working family that wants and needs it, as well as to ensure that providers and childcare workers are compensated, supported, and respected as the professional educators that they are. The work of CSC predates the pandemic, but COVID-19 really catalyzed this group, and the advocacy efforts that CFC has helped lead has brought over $60 million in the childcare sector locally in a region where there had previously been no local investment. CFC's areas of focus are listed here, but of course, the most important for discussion here today is increasing childcare facilities, which includes both family childcare homes, centers, and any other types in a mixed delivery system. Boom. CFC really began to tackle the issue of facilities in the summer of 2021, where an ad hoc work really brought to light to the collective partners where the sticking points were in regard to facilities expansion and what was needed. These discussions and insights from childcare providers brought about a number of developments. It helped inform, for example, the mission-driven finance program, CARE, a national real estate investment trust that is an integrated real estate investment strategy. It's built both on expanding childcare facilities and homes while also helping the bottom line for childcare centers and wealth building for family childcare providers. And in fact, we have Laura Cohn on the, I saw her tune in today, and the CARE Access Real Estate Investment Trust also brought San Diego County $1 million in a federal appropriation, San Diego's only federal appropriation last cycle, and an excellent example of a public and private partnership. It also carved a path for us to start a line of advocacy with the City of San Diego to perform facilities assessment of the city-owned locations that could be utilized for childcare, which has now spun into the need for a city council-driven effort to update local statutes to allow for childcare on these properties. It has also spurred conversation with the city around greater protections for childcare providers from abusive landlords. And finally, it reinforced the seed that had already been planted, which was that it's absolutely necessary to fully understand the importance and barriers of co-locating childcare within new and renovated affordable housing developments. When it comes to building affordable housing, particularly housing that is meant to serve families with working families, where so much emphasis is placed on supporting pathways to stable employment, childcare must be top of mind. It does no good to build affordable housing only to look back and wish we would have had the insight to build it in such a way that allowed for an essential business and reliable tenant like childcare, something that could really serve the needs of working families both in the building and in the broader community. We know the affordable housing system is complex. We know that the childcare system is complex, which is what all the more reason we need this co-location pilot to understand how these two sectors can best work together, because it can mean real, tangible improvements in the lives of children experiencing poverty. So I'll end on this. I once met with a parent who commuted 40 minutes each way from her affordable housing to reach affordable childcare in addition to her work commute. Think of what a difference an extra hour and a half a day would mean to her and her child. When we think about a family already stretched to make ends meet, this would make all the difference in the world. Thank you so much for your time and attention today.
Thank you, Erin. And I will invite now Bethany with the Assembly Member Christopher Ward office to share with us their update in terms of the budget request. But I first want to thank you, Bethany, Assembly Member Ward, and your office for being champions for this request. So
thank you very much. Yes, I'm Bethany Westfall, Chief of Staff to Assemblymember Chris Ward, who represents the 78th Assembly District in San Diego. And when Build Up California came to us on this budget request, he was very eager to pursue it as a priority for him with the Assembly Budget Committee as a request. His background on housing issues, especially education, really comes into play with this type of budget request. And to put together a budget request for $10 million to do a pilot project for San Diego County and Fresno County, he was very interested in, and seeing how it can, if it does get funded, how it can be replicated possibly, throughout the state. So the budget committee, the Assembly Budget Committee, we submitted it to them. And that would be the subcommittee number 4 on state administration, because the Department of Housing and Community Development is under their authority or jurisdiction. They have received a lot of budget requests from members this year, especially given the big surplus. So we're not quite sure exactly what's going to happen. We know that the budget subcommittee is going through all the requests. We have had discussions with the committee consultant, who seemed very eager about the synergies involved in this issue. And I think, as Erin had the current slide about trying not to be in silos, and this is one where we can bring it together, the housing, the childcare, the education, all of that together. That's something that appeals to the legislature on that, given that. So the June 15th is when the Assembly needs to pass the state budget. This issue might be in that budget, or it might be in a budget trailer bill, not quite sure how it would be. And then the governor has to sign it by June 30th. Now, having said that, budget trailer bills can still be negotiated after June 15th and acted upon. And so depending on how the budget subcommittee or the budget committee deals with these issues, we're not quite sure at this point, but we're continuing to monitor them. So we're just, we're hopefully, and also, the legislature does adjourn session at the end of August. So we know something will happen between now and August. But this, I think it's great for synergies, this issue, and Assemblymember Ward is very supportive, and that's why he supported it. So thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you so much, Bethany. And again, thank you so much for your work and for all the work that Assemblymember Ward and all the Assembly members and elected officials, the state elected officials do to champion childcare in the decision-making process, especially in the budget. So with that, we are going to conclude our policy briefing. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to answer live questions, but we will collect all the questions that were sent in the chat and then share in a follow-up email, including information about the applications process that we know, right, in terms of the current grant program. Again, I want to thank all the speakers today, your reason, especially the childcare providers that joined us, took your time during the nap hour of the kids. Really, again, we honor you and know how important your work is, and hopefully our state also believes in that and put the money where our values are and where we think that's important. So, and childcare is definitely up in the priority in terms of our state values. And as residents, we all are voicing this opinion, and we invite you all participants that can support our request to visit our website, buildupcalifornia.org, go to the advocacy tab, there are sign-on letters there, add your organization to our requests for both of them, if possible, and if it's aligned with your values and your missions. And again, thank you for joining us today, and we hope to have you in future events. And let's see if we can get these funds as part of the budget this year. So thank you all.